We talked about how it was the moral base that we've got to kill disease, dumb down 90% because they're all damned. Calvin was just saying what the British lords already believed,
yes.
just like Darwin was and Galton. It fits in to the attitude they already had. And then just like last year, the head of the state board was being questioned before the legislature by Representative Susanna Hupp. We have the video in Endgame. And she says, why are 2/3 plus of the foster kids on psychotropic drugs? Why are they on a bunch of drugs on average? And he said, well, because they're bad gene pool, bad genetics. You see, there's no genetic test. They're just waging war.
Right.
And it's literally a scientific dictatorship. Go ahead.
Well, if your listeners will understand that the real power generating this thing, it's a substitute religion. These people don't need money, and they don't need status. They're following some kind of philosophical, religious ideal, and that's
it's
where
the control freak religion's what I call it.
Okay, but it's where the zeal comes from, so that you're wasting your breath if you think you can sit down with a superior argument, show evidence for the rightness of your argument, and people will say, oh, wow, yeah, we were doing it wrong. No, that won't happen. The idea is to set aside 95% of the human race and to turn them into, I'm sure you've heard this term over and over again, human resources. In what sense is a human life with a sovereign spirit a human resource?
It's zombies.
It really is. They're human resources, I presume. In any case, so what we have here are a group of passionate ideologues at the end of the 19th century, so we'll bring this right up to the present. And we have a large number of people who follow what we all understand to be human nature, that it can be seduced by greed and the promise of, more than your share. So the Rockefellers and the Carnegies have the zeal, but what do they promise the other powerful people to fall in line here? They don't talk about this as a philosophic ideal at all. They talk about efficiency. And if you look in, again, the Internet's a blessing in this regard. Between 1890 and 1925, when this thing was being set up, when institutional schooling was being set up, the commonest term in business circles is scientific management. That's measured by efficiency. Well, what is efficiency? Well, if you know Frederick Taylor's time and motion studies, where somebody stands and watches you move your hand at a machine for several days, and then the orders come down, move your hand this way, turn your head this way, that's almost a parody of what scientific efficiency is.
It's turning people into machines.
Exactly.
But more than that, the Rockefellers and Carnegies write in their secret eugenics, because the public view is negative and positive eugenics, killing the infirm, energizing and breeding the elites for supermen, but they actually state that's not really the plan. The plan is to dumb down the middle class and knock out competition and freeze any new renaissance from happening or new elites emerging. So it's monopoly men doing what they do, dumbing down the mass so that no one can ever rise against them.
It's lovely that you say that, because if you trace the major documents, the immortal ones that are taught in every good college in the United States, but taught as a good thing, not a bad thing, you find that the destruction of the common imagination is at the center of the thing. Yes, they could take police and an army and lock you up or deprive you of food or crack the whip. But throughout history, that has never worked for very long. And every government that's used that as their control technique has been toppled sooner or later. So what has to be done is a good deal subtler than that. You have to make people their own prisoners, and you have to remove their imagination so they can't think of anything different to do. And, oh, Alex, if I could just, well, whatever. The number of people on the highest levels of intellectual society who have said exactly what I just said are endless. You can trace them every 50 or 100 years all the way back to Plato and all the way up to the current.
And let me add a facet and a direct attack on television, and they've got thousands of studies on this, as you know, Mr. Gatto, but that's for the audience. What happens is when you watch television, you are passive, and it doesn't cause complex imaginary processes in the mind. When you listen to radio or read, you have to image everything you're hearing.
Right.
And so that increases cognitive ability and neuron connections, and that's why there's huge causal connections to Alzheimer's and old folks that watch a lot of television versus some composer whose brain they cut open when they die, and it's a tiny shriveled thing at 90 years old, but the person was a genius bouncing off the walls when they died. It isn't even that the brain mass starts dying at age 30. It's that you have all this extra brain mass compared to what's used, say when you're 20, for new neuron connections to be made, for other pathways to be used, and literally television does lower brain waves after just a few minutes down to a sleep state. So it's literally a machine that dulls massively your overall psyche.
Yes, precisely. And if your readers would like to follow up on that idea that Alex just gave you, and please call me John, Alex. If you want to follow up on that, in the 1950s, a Canadian professor named Marshall McLuhan wrote extensively about this. His style is a little wacky, but his ideas are right on target. The television.
Well, you also have the 5 arguments for elimination of television.
Oh, that's a brilliant book. If you want to take a minute and tell your listeners that's a brilliant book. Marie Wynn, isn't that?
Yes.
Yeah. It's 4 arguments for the elimination.
Yeah, 4. I read it like 10 years ago.
But it's a splendid book, and it's written in a conversational style. It's fully scholarly, but you know, it's not something that'll give you a headache after you read it.
All right, we're talking to John Taylor Gatto. We got to hurry into currently what's happening in the last 5 minutes. Then certainly, sir, got to have a part 3. I meant to have you on 2 hours a day, but I double booked. So if you'd grace us with your presence again next week or the week after that, that would be great.